Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to back to Pizza Ministries. It's been a bit. I don't know what year it is. It's been so long. My name is Adam Cross, and I'm here with Brett Becker. And we're here. It's been a while. We're still alive. Brett turned 45 last.
Oh man, it actually was my birthday last week, but I didn't turn 40.
Now I feel bad. I didn't text you.
Yeah, well, yeah. So it seems like, we're gonna restart this thing, because I don't know. It's good. What chicken soup for the soul type stuff for us to talk in a public forum. But in reality, Adam didn't text me on my birthday, so this is my excuse to like hang out with him. You know, I reach out all the time, and I have to create these weird environments for him to actually want to hang out with me.
Yes, I think you need to go to confession after that little story. It's a good narrative.
I am not culpable for the trauma that you've given me, venial sin at most.
But when was the last time we had an episode?
Yikes.
Was it pre? No, it was during COVID, I think.
Well, I mean, the other thing to mention is, okay, yeah, I can't remember the last time it was during COVID.
Yeah.
I know that because Father Goya was here.
Yes.
But the better question is, how long have we been talking about doing this again since that last episode, or how many times has it been brought up? And I think it's been quite a bit of times.
It's like every other month, like, hey, should we start recording again?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, that was fun. Sure.
Oh, wait, I'm having a baby.
Yeah. Every 2 months, one of us was having a baby, and it was really...
That's a lot of babies.
It is
well, I mean, we did have babies. That's a real thing.
Yes.
I say
yes.
you.
Not together. Not yet. We don't meet up enough to have babies together yet, but...
I think you had your second and third.
Yeah. Well, the second was like right before COVID. The third, he's a year and a half now, so it was like right after. But the second one lived his life during COVID. So,
and I had my oldest right as COVID was starting.
Yeah,
and then second came a year and a half ago. So
yeah.
We've been busy. We got valid excuses. We have little kids running around and.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, because every successful Catholic podcast, it's by single people who have no children. Like that. That's how it goes.
Catholic dance.
Because it's not true. But yeah, like I mean, COVID was a time warp, though. We could admit that. Like,
yeah.
I do think that's part of the reason why we didn't do it, because I think. The perception of time was like messed up, so it didn't feel as long. Also,
yeah, I think we were probably zoomed out too. Like,
oh hell,
I'm not gonna lie, a little bit about being like on Zoom at night with a ring light staring at me. I'm like, I'm back in a pandemic.
I know.
Why am I here?
Yeah, and I think we've like blocked off like the basic necessities, or like blocked off like the basic things that you need to do to be good at Zoom, because like literally before we started recording, it was like, how do we do this? What's an introduction? Like, is the lighting okay? What button do I press?
Yeah.
So it's a little weird to come back to it. Or
yes,
excuse me, but sorry, I'm addicted to soda now post pandemic too. Just to let you know. Right.
But I think too, before or last time we recorded, I was working in youth ministry still, and not doing that anymore. I was a director in ministry for a bit, and now I'm full-time private practice, and but that's a big change. So coming out of COVID, I left youth ministry. That might tell you something.
Yeah, you became Catholic famous on the way too, right? Everyone is calling you to lead their retreats. The priests, all the formation people, they're calling you. So,
I mean,
to help.
Or I'm not getting the call.
No, that's all.
If you mean all, you mean like one call.
That's good. Good for you, a real person. Yeah. COVID was weird. Oh, and I'm still working in youth ministry, so I haven't changed jobs in 13, 14 years now, so good for you.
And you're not actually 45, just to kind of bail you out of that, right?
Yeah,
Nothing wrong with being 45. It's just fun to give you a hard time because
yeah,
you're often perceived by teens to be really old.
which is so sad because which is so sad because I try so hard to look young to them. Like, hey, do you like Doja Cat? I think that's like, yeah, Doja Cat. I don't know what a Doja Cat is. I don't do that. Okay, I don't try hard to pander to the young people. In fact, I think it's the opposite now, where I'm acting like a 45-year-old. I'm like, all the things the young people do are the worst. Like, get a job, listen to real music.
You're being real. That's the important part.
Yeah, the generational shift has been different. I think working in youth ministry for 13 years, the past 3-4 years, like, I think I've experienced that generational shift, and it's actually like I have to do things differently now. People are different, and that's not me trying to be negative or anything like that. Like, kids really are different right now. So.
Yeah, like really, really different.
Okay, you're noticing that too, Mr.
We could dive into that, from a ministry standpoint, from a therapy standpoint.
Yeah, because you have all that perspective, and I would love to hear you affirm my
perspective is kind of not the norm, but I am seeing some trends, and it's kind of scary. That's a whole topic. Maybe we do an episode on that, but yeah, I'm seeing some things where I'm like, oh, okay, this kind of seems to be across the board.
Yeah,
with people coming in to work with me. So
yeah.
And I'm gonna be honest. I was thinking today about recording, and I was just thinking about Pizza Ministries, and I was like, this is the stupidest name. I've been telling Brett this since the beginning. I'm like, this is a dumb name.
What do we need
to run along with it?
Well, yeah, you have, because it's good. It's just it doesn't fit you, I guess. But you know what? You need to adapt. For those who don't remember, the whole idea was to be a resource for those who work in ministry, especially youth and maybe young adult ministry, and to combat the lie that they've been told. At least I've heard it here a bunch of times, where it's like, feed them pizza and make sure they don't get pregnant, that type of stuff. It's like, no. So it's a satire. Like, it's making fun of that, and it's an opportunity for us to realize that we can't get deep in the faith, and it's not that intimidating to do that. And so shut up, Adam. I think it's a good name.
I did eat a lot of pizza when I was a youth minister.
And that's why you don't work in.
Yeah, that's for good purpose. We didn't talk about chastity last week. We're talking about this week.
So you've experienced it enough to know the difference between a good chastity talk and a bad one, then?
I hope so.
Well, the trend is right now, chastity talks are kind of rough because, or at least in evangelical circles, because I think people are realizing that when people mix up the idea of a purity talk and a chastity talk, they're supposed to be different. And I think a lot of us have been taking leads from the toxic purity talks, like the weird analogies where it's like the sandwich that's like half eaten or something, like, you know what I'm talking about? Or like,
I've not heard that.
Okay, the analogies for a bad purity talk go along the lines of like, hey, you don't want to do this with the person you're attracted to, because imagine your spouse. Imagine you are a sandwich and your spouse opens their lunchbox to see a delicious sandwich that they've been waiting all day for, and there is a bite taken out of it. Yeah, like, she may love you enough, or he may love you enough to still consume the sandwich, although it's been bitten, but do you want to give him that disservice? So those are like the bad chastity talk stuff that I've heard. That's more like
bad sandwich analogy, but I've heard that, like, think about your future spouse.
Yeah.
Save yourself from them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I think it really does come down to understanding like what the purpose of chastity is, without like, even before talking about saving yourself for a spouse, it's like, well, why be chaste at all?
Yes.
Not everyone's called to marriage. And, so why be like, if you're just like, well, don't hurt your future spouse, is like, well, that's limited reasoning,
Yeah, but that you have to admit, I don't know how far, because I'm 45 apparently, so I have a lot of I have a lot of experience hearing this stuff. I don't get me wrong, I think chastity talks are vital for high school. I do. Um, but for how long was it bad? It might still be bad. I don't know, because sometimes we have taken the lead from like the evangelical circles and stuff like that, and there's some skewed things. I think they all mean well. I really do, but I think the tweaks that we've been making lately, well, at least years ago, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm out of the loop, but I think my approach to it.
Good for you.
Passive aggressive. I think my approach to it now would probably be like on a more like fundamental human level of like, why we need the right ordering of our desires, and kind of approaching it from that perspective first, and like that grounded in how we relate to God. And it's not just about like, don't dirty yourself, because it's all shame based. It's like,
oh yes,
but understanding like what we're supposed to be as humans and what God calls us to, it's like, that's really hopeful. And that there's a lot of, it's all based on selfless love. So if they don't have an understanding of that, it's like, why talk about like, why talk about the shame aspect or the fear aspects like that?
Well, you're kind of doomed to fail in general. Like chastity brings about like, it's easy to come back to a chaste life. You know what I mean? If you were to succumb to something, right? Yeah. And I'm not just saying physically, but like mentally, all that stuff. It's purity culture, I guess that's what they'd call it. What do you come back from? You have to do some weird vow of like second virginity or something like that. It's real formal. I don't know. I mean, I hope I don't offend anybody with that. But with chastity, you could always like live a chaste life in a post after you didn't live a chaste life. You know what I mean? It's like there's going to be some scars and stuff like that, but it's beyond just don't boink. Don't think about boinking.
Well, it sounds like a purity culture, even like I guess what you're saying is more based on like self-reliance, where it's like, now I have to make this vow to not be dirty anymore, and to like purify myself. Where I think chastity is kind of, and again, purity is not wrong, but if it's coming from a place of self-reliance and not relying on grace, then it's, that's where you get into some bad stuff. But I think chastity is more reliant on grace, because you're relying on God's grace to help you order your desires. Order really that you have some control over your body and your mind, right? Like, because that right ordering is messed up with original sin and the effects of original sin. Yeah. So it's like you're relying on God's grace to really counter concupiscence and everything there. So yeah, I don't know. I guess the emphasis, it's got to be like, hey, you can't be chaste on your own. Like, you need God's grace, and this is what that means. Versus just like, well, just be pure. Just try harder. It's like, that's really gross to me.
Yeah, I think it took us a while to realize that, to be honest. And maybe, I don't know, the COVID time warp is happening in my brain, so I can't remember if that was a thing that we dealt with earlier or if it's a thing we deal with now.
And I work with a lot of people, coming from a background of addiction with pornography, and it's, pastorally talking about that. It's like, okay, well, average age of exposure is 8.
It's 8 now?
It's probably actually lower. It was 8 like 10 years ago.
Wow.
So if an 8-year-old is exposed and they are watching porn for 10 years, right, or even like a 10 or 12-year-old, and then 8 to 10 years later, like in their 20s or after high school, they have like a decade of addiction under their belt. So how do we treat that? Because is that 8-year-old responsible for, like fully protecting their eyes? And, so it's kind of questions like, where are the parents? What have they access to? Yeah. There's still a level of, like, okay, what are they choosing here? But at the same time, it's not so simple. It's just like, well, just stop.
It's like, funny that you brought that up, because I'm pretty, this seems like a weird segue. Actually, no, because I didn't plan this. I am a sacrament receiver, or if a Vatican II mindset would say, I celebrate the sacraments frequently. Not out of self-righteousness or anything, but like the idea of grace is very tangible within sacraments. What I'm trying to say is I go to confession frequently, right? And I try to receive it. I've been trying to go to daily mass more and stuff like that. So I'm pretty numb to the bad confession. You know what I mean? So usually for me, the bad confession is, oh man, that priest was like super fluffy about this. Like I need to be told that what I did was kind of bad. You know what I mean? I don't need excuses, right? Usually that's the bad confession, and I could get past that because with absolution, who cares what comes before it, right? And I've actually taken pride because like every time it's like it's been 2 weeks, that's usually a signal for the priests to be like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing, so we don't have to take that long, right? So but yeah, sometimes you get the bad ones in that respect. I rarely get the bad ones where like the priests are very like mean. Kind of, but I did have that experience the other week. And the reason why I brought that up is because the question was asked. The question was, what was it? I was in the middle of telling my sins, and the priest was like, do you think that if you got like in an accident on the way here that you would be in hell right now? And it was like, dude, I just told you I went to confession 14 days ago, man. Like, why you gotta give me questions like this? I'm obviously going off there. Why do you think I'm going? Not just because of that, but it's like, what a weird question to ask, right? And then I kind of froze, right? Because I want to be respectful. I want the confession to be quick. I want all that. And then I told him, like, probably, but like, I can't answer that. Like, there's culpability, like regarding addiction. There's all that type of stuff. So I can't really say yes or no to that. And he just like went on this big tirade about what culpability really is, blah 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 blah. And it was like, I absolutely disagree with you. And I'm not like some, like I like the difficult parts of our faith, right? I don't know why, but I do. But it was just like, nah, this can't be right. And I left thinking, oh, okay, this was relating to like the purity culture and like addiction and all that type of stuff. I left thinking, well, maybe he's wrong. He's probably wrong, but also like, how many people are not going to go to confession if they like go to this guy and the confession feels that way? You know what I mean? And past me would have been like, no, I deserve it. Let me pound my chest. Let me accept the 2 rosary penance. Like, let me do all this stuff. But now, and I don't know if things have changed with you or if it was ever like that before, but working in ministry, it's like, man, I would never, because I used to like tell my kids, hey, I'm going to confession here on this day. If you want to go with me, we could all go to, not at the same time, like in the confessional, but if you want to go get like ice cream after or coffee or whatever, let's do that. But now it's like, when do I invite them? Like, because they may never want to go again, right? I guess this does tie into what we were talking about because, I don't know, making people feel bad for the things that they've done just seems like, and not in a weird, like fluffy way, it just doesn't seem very prodigal son-ish of them. You know what I mean? Like it's the opposite. I heard a reflection on the prodigal son the other day. I'm talking a lot. This is how I know I'm out of practice. But it was like, I forgot where I heard it. It's probably on a podcast, but it was like the prodigal son returned, but before he could even acknowledge the father or even say, I'm sorry, the father was like chasing after him. And that just seems like the opposite of what I experienced that day. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or purity culture.
Yeah. I've unfortunately only had the bad experiences at confession where a priest is like critical.
Oh, really?
I haven't experienced a priest who's like overly fluffy and
Oh, really?
oh, nothing's the matter. That's
and you're a crazy sinner then, man. No, I'm just kidding.
I have some experiences where I look back and I just kind of cringe and I'm like, dude, I'm happy I'm still Catholic. Like,
yeah,
if I wasn't, like that's just bad, like. So, just stuff where it's like, oh, really? You're struggling with that again? Just
yeah. Why are you even coming here?
What if this person knew that you were struggling with that? Like that.
Yeah.
And
isn't it crazy?
Yeah. And my pastor is really good about like, hey, if you ever feel like you're being judged in confession, or if you ever feel like you're being talked down to or criticized, like you have, you can get up and leave, because that's what confession's about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like he says that from the pulpit, and he is very solid, priest. And he's like, if you feel like you're getting the opposite of mercy, and, feel like you're being condemned, like walk. And go to a different priest, because that's not what it's here
for. You know what my approach would be, and I guess it did happen. I would just freaking wait till absolution, like that's it, so I don't have to go again, because I know that even eventually it would get there. And this is bad. It might be bad, but I'm lucky that I've always have known like the whole idea of reconciliation isn't the spiritual direction or anything like that. Just get your grace. Do your act of contrition, do your penance. It doesn't matter the quality of that before.
Yeah.
I'm also not saying that you shouldn't seek that. Like if you have a personal confessor or whatever, right? You should seek that. If you have someone who would be there for you and kind of give that mix in a very personal way, or if you know someone that you feel gratified during the sacrament, you should do that. But I think knowing that if you lack that, it doesn't make the sacrament less. I think that's wise, because I do think people will not go if they have a bad confession.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, for you and I, it's like, okay, we're going to come back. That was really bad, but we're going to come back. But, if it's a teen or someone who hasn't been to confession in years, or someone who's just really like anxious going to confession, and they go and they just have that one bad experience, it can push people away from the church and God, and that's like the worst case scenario. So it's, if you can push through the bad confession, that's great. But at the same time, it's like, I think it helps for people to know, like if you really feel like you're just being treated poorly, like that's not what this is about. And it's not all the feeling, like you say, it's about the grace of the sacrament. But at the same time, it's like, that priest's being really grumpy, and and it could be hurtful, and it could be damaging even to your life. So.
Oh, definitely, it could be, and it may seem like there's no correlation, but the idea that a priest who may not believe in the true presence but has received holy orders and all that stuff, when they do the Eucharistic prayer within the liturgy, that the Eucharist is still valid. That helps me so much to know that I don't have to question what we were taught in the faith, especially if there's, and I don't have to depend on, I don't want to rag priests because I love priests, right? But like, I don't have to depend on the
state of their soul.
Yeah, I don't have to do that, right? They don't have to be Padre Pio, you know what I mean? Like, it could be an actual scumbag who has no belief but still does it, and that just shows how great our God is. So that's why by the way, we weren't planning on talking about this. I was going to talk about some anime that made me feel like shit and what it means about heaven. I've been watching anime the past year or whatever, and we'll talk about that at some point. But like, the idea that the imprint of sin beyond like what original sin is. Like that shouldn't be that brings about shame, not guilt, but shame. And I think there was a point, at least in my long lifetime, I'm gonna embrace the joke so you stop making the joke about how old I am.
That's your wisdom.
It's good to shy away from that and have clarity with that, right? I'm not trying to rag anyone, but that's what purity culture does. It's kind of like a brand. It's a second original sin. It's like, it's not because of concupiscence. It is, or it might be, but it's also because of you, and that will never go away. And I think we have to be real sensitive to this stuff, because I think, including myself, we've all grown to be very sensitive during and post-pandemic. So
yeah, and I think it's important to talk about, that we're not reliant on a priest's humanity, which is going to be broken and very imperfect. And I mean, that just points us back to, like, no, like, we're relying on Christ and God's grace, and and with purity and chastity, it's going back to that. We're not relying on our humanity, although God is wanting us to kind of, he wants us to tend the garden, that is our life, and to pursue chastity, but we're not trying to do that out of just like our own strength, and I'm going to pull myself up by my bootstraps and just figure this out. It's like, no, like, I'm relying on God's grace. Grace is a real thing, and I need it to do most anything.
Yeah, you're in a unique realm where you help with therapy and you have a Catholic background with that. Do you feel like you're talking about grace a lot with that?
Yeah, for sure, especially with addictions and everything, because it just can feel like so behavioral, where it's just like, well, you do A and you do B, and then you'll get C and you'll get sobriety, and it's like, no, that's not like if an addict really wants to do something, they can't just change their behavior. It's not like, oh, it'll be easy, I'll just stop doing it, right? And it's like, okay, well, that would be great.
I feel like I hear that a lot, though, where it's just like,
there was a Mad TV sketch. It was like a long time ago, and I don't know if you've like watched or heard of like the Bob Newhart show.
Because
you're old.
Yeah. Yes, I do. I do know the Bob Newhart show.
I can't remember if he was actually playing the psychologist, or if it was just like a parody, but it was like a psychologist, and then a lady comes in and she's like, hey, like, I'm really struggling with claustrophobia, and like, I want to seek healing for this. And then, and he's like, okay, come on in. And she asks, like, okay, how much is it going to be? He's like, oh, it's $5. He's like, okay, how long are the sessions? 60 seconds. It's like, what? It's like, yeah, just 60 seconds, $5. Like, let's get started. And she's like, okay, so tell me what your problem is. She's like, well, I'm really claustrophobic, and if I'm in small spaces, I just freak out. And he's just like, just stop.
Yeah, I don't
know. She's like, what? Like, yeah, just stop being claustrophobic. And then it's like, tell me more. It just like, it just keeps going. It's like, well, just stop. I think sometimes that's the expectation with like behavioral changes, where it's just like, oh, well, if I could just stop, I would. But it's not that easy. And then I think where my job comes in is we're looking at like, well, what are the beliefs in your head, right, that make you want to do those behavioral things? And where did you learn those beliefs? Like, where was that cemented in your experience? And there could be a lot of beliefs floating in our head, like for something and against something simultaneously. And the one thing can kind of win out. You act on it, so it's not just behavioral, it's emotional, it's, cognitive, it's rooted in like family stuff too. So
it's like neural also, right? It could be all that. And okay.
Yeah, all that wrapped up in one, body, mind, and soul.
Yeah. But the question is, would you go to hell? If not, just kidding.
I mean, if you're going to confession, I guess it just depends on presumption, maybe.
Oh.
There's probably more layers to that than presumption, but be like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just gonna go. I don't have to really be sorry.
I don't think I think presumption also is like I'm dealing with something that is a constant in my life. I feel terrible about it, but at least I get to go to confession on Saturday. Like that's more of the things that I hear about more than like presuming God's grace in the moment, or right after the moment. I hear that more, but there's still something that's good that could come out of that. It's still sin, but I get, but with all sin, something could come out of it with grace, right? Grace. We talked about it. You talk about it. That's why you make the big bucks. It's grace, brains, and grace, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, I this was kind of like off the cuff type thing. We really weren't planning for this, but I do feel like it is relevant. I think people have lost the proper emotions. I mean, because I don't want to say emotions are bad, but like that tendency to lean towards grace during the isolation. And I'm probably not even like the most anti-lockdown person. Like that's just a political thing, right? But like the damage that was done, for some reason, working in ministry, and I also don't know mental health stuff as much as you. I was like, okay, like half a year post-pandemic, we're gonna be back and normal. It's been like what, 2 years or something, and it still feels strange, and it's difficult.
Yeah, and I think just seeing the effects on like kids, too. I think that's the hardest. Is like adults. There's some level of like, I don't know, normalcy and like returning back to life, or I don't know, just adjusting as an adult. But when you see these kids, or like, my elementary school was COVID, or middle school, and like how just social functioning now that they're older in high school or middle school, it's like has changed the whole like structure of middle school. It's like, whoa, this is kind of systemic, or like it kind of hurts. Like it's like really sad to see that. I don't know if you're seeing just like kids just totally shit.
Yeah, it reminds me of, and I'm not saying this with a lack of hope or anything like that. I don't cease to minister to these kids because it's different. I promise. It may be like harder for me, and it may take its toll a little bit more. But it reminds me of like if you watch an old Simpsons episode and they have like commentary on like Gen X and how they're so influenced by the crowd, but also don't show a lot of emotion. Like they try to do that. I think a lot of Gen Z kids want to look apathetic, because I can say with a good amount of confidence that the majority of the kids pre-pandemic, like they didn't care if they looked like they were interested or not. If they were interested, they were interested, right? They didn't care about this reputation. But that's what, I don't know if it's just a regional thing where I am, but that has been difficult. And that's taken its toll on me a little bit. But it's harder to, and I kind of empathize with this, where like if there's a social gathering or something, or like a youth group, for me who is like secretly introverted, it's hard for me to go to those things even with my peers, because I think even before the pandemic, I liked the idea of staying home and doing nothing after a long day or a long week. Before the pandemic, I was willing to push through that. Post-pandemic, it takes a lot more of a push to go do social things. So I see that with the teens also. And I empathize with that. Retreats are really effective, though. That's what I've noticed, at least with our kids. Like when you get them to go to the retreat, it works well. Like if their parents force them to do it, it works well. But like the normal things, the everyday things, those don't seem as they don't take those as seriously as they did before.
Yeah. And it does seem like there's more awareness, more understanding of mental health issues with teens. But then at the same time, sometimes it's kind of it can be thrown around as an excuse. Like I remember kind of coming out of the pandemic, still working at the parish, and it was like, it's like, my kid can't go away because, this and this on retreat, and we would kind of make every accommodation possible, be like, okay, they have their own space, they have the check-in, they can call you, it, but it was just like, no, like they just it's not right for them, and I was just like, like, I get it, and I'm a therapist, I understand.
You know what you should have done?
But
you should have
them,
encourage them. You should have challenged them by asking them if they died on the way to the retreat, if they'd go to hell or not.
What would happen?
No, I do. You're right though. Like, people do have a better idea of mental health and all that stuff, but I do think people are making a lot of excuses with it. I don't think there's this like faux pas about seeing a therapist and stuff like that, but I also don't think most of the people that need to seek therapy are getting therapy also. Even with an awareness, I think people are so busy, or they don't know how to do it, or it's too expensive to seek therapy. So
yeah, for sure. And I think the excuses part, I mean, there could be really valid anxiety, and it could be an excuse. Because part of dealing with anxiety and these things is like trying something new, or again, like trying to change our worldview, our mindset. If we're like really stuck in ourselves, really feeling down, I think that's why retreats are so effective, because you're really challenging someone to step out of their comfort zone to look at something different. And when they do that, they actually see something that's really good, and they see something that's other than themselves. They see a bigger picture. They see hope. So it's like, it can be valid anxiety, and it could be on some level an excuse, because it's like, and I just say that because when I was a teen, if I had that option to say, oh, I'm just anxious, dude, I would have taken that. Like, I would all over that. Like, I made up other excuses that were just not as good. And I got away with it. But if I could have said like, oh yeah, just anxious, like, I would have been like, okay, I'm going with that. No.
I get it. Because I don't want to be the guy, because I think I probably deal with a little bit of anxiety, and I was starting to realize that just in general from a young age, or at least in my adolescence, and I pushed through it, which in a certain regard, I think that's good, right? While knowing what my limits are as I get older and older. But I do agree that some people do use it as an excuse, because I don't think it's connected with people yet that, like you said, this stuff like trying the new things, or putting yourself in a group of people that may be going through the same thing, or have a common goal, or just for you to be uncomfortable in a very good way by yourself. Like that stuff is really important and life-giving, but it's hard to express that. But I don't know. So like the youth minister or the counselor and all that stuff, I don't think they lack empathy even when they get annoyed by the excuses that are made. I think that it's frustrating to know that what they are feeling is valid, and that what you can do or what you are providing could help, but that doesn't lack empathy when you mention that this stuff could help. So.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound invalidating for anyone who's like feeling anxious about social events, because I get that too. And at the same time, I think anytime we are asked to have faith, we're asked to risk stepping out of ourselves and stepping into something that is uncertain, right? And like any relationship we have is uncertain, right? Any relationship is in some sense a risk, because I could be rejected, I could be hurt, so it's a risk, right? And like Jesus is the ultimate example of that. It's like he had a lot of relationships and they crucified him, like people he knew, right? Like people he was trying to save, people he cared about were the people that crucified him. Like that's a giant risk, is utter rejection. And we're called to like go into that and not go into it alone, and even I know we haven't brought up C.S. Lewis in my devotions yet, but but going back to like Aslan is not a tame lion, right? It's like there's a risk there. It's like, I'm gonna go and hug a lion. Well, guess what? You could be eaten.
Yeah.
And like that same idea with God. It's like you could be eaten. Like you could be consumed. Like that's the goal. But it's a risk. Right. I don't know.
Yeah.
That kind of goes into the other topic, but I'm also thinking like we're covering so much here.
At some point, we're gonna have to do a second part. I know it.
Yeah.
But there is like an interesting segue from that because in that show that I was talking about, this kid's going through like depression and like the advice that he keeps getting from people that he kind of hears a little bit but then ignores is like, he likes to run away from things that are painful, and people keep trying to explain to him like there's a chance that good stuff can come out of this pain that you don't pursue, but like pain could bring out like empathy, pain could bring out strength, pain could bring out clarity. And the whole idea of the kid is just avoiding pain. And it's kind of like it's interesting because it does make sense for him to run away and stuff. Like, anyways, so there is an interesting segue. I don't know if we're gonna get to it tonight, but like, discomfort, it can be bad at times. And I think we're trying to, at least me and some of the people I deal with, we're trying to condition ourselves to be willing to be uncomfortable again, because things were so comfortable, at least like from the introvert's perspective, at least things were comfortable for a bit and it was easy to make excuses. But yeah, I think I don't know. I thought like I said, 6 months in, we would realize like, oh yeah, I did this thing that I didn't want to do before and I got a lot out of it. It's really hard to like have that temperament naturally right now. I don't know when it comes back or if it comes back, but
yeah, true.
It's been a tough time.
Yeah. Well, and I think kind of what you're saying is a good teaser for maybe the next episode and kind of what you're describing with the show. We're going to talk about heaven and beatific vision and what that entails. But I think it's hard with the discomfort because, for a few reasons, because in post-pandemic worlds, I think it's just kind of normal not to push people, right? It's been more normalized, like don't push people to do anything they're not comfortable with.
Oh, I feel that constantly. Now, I've always had an issue with that, but that's like a vice of mine, but like I feel like it's been accelerated these past couple of years.
Yeah. Well, and it's like don't call somebody something that they're not comfortable with. Don't reference something that somebody's not comfortable with. Like you should know somehow. You should be able to mind read. So we have to kind of walk on eggshells in society in some ways, but translating that to social interaction or trying something new, it's like, well, just don't push people. Right? Like meet them where they're at and then don't call them to anything higher. And that's problematic. It's because it's kind of, we're stuck in that world of like, well, you just need to accept me 100% as I am or else you're doing harm to me. Right. And I think we see that in a few areas of society, but I think that's like a false dichotomy. I think it has to be like, no, we can meet people where they're at and seek to understand what they're going through and call them to something else, like call them to greater.
In theory, like honestly, and I don't know if this is a me thing, but that seems like the easiest thing in the world to me. It really does. Like, to like care for someone, to care enough where you don't want to offend them without like swaying from the truth or like are distorting what you believe even for the person. Like that seems easy.
Yeah.
But like I think the examples that we get constantly are on one extreme or the other. And I think that's where it's hard to be the person that wants to be caring and pastoral, and that seems like one of the extremes. Or maybe that's not what I'm saying. I don't want to be like considered like breaking the norm when we do that. You're not one of the extremes. That's what I'm trying to say. And you're not necessarily like moderate or anything, but it's just like that's so different than what everybody else is doing. It's like, no, like it's been like that for a while. And I think what I've noticed is that people who may have like different lifestyles or whatever, or very aggressive when it comes to like promoting that stuff, the vast majority of the time, I know it like shrinks the sample size, but like most of that is online. Like I don't see people acting like that in real life. I really don't. Like, and if I do, maybe we'd be better equipped to deal with that and not like start a fight or something. I don't know what we're talking about necessarily specifically, but like I think because we were locked in for like however long, that our perception of reality and like the quasi reality of social media and television shows and all that stuff, and I think it's really like skewed our perception of what actual person to person reality is.
Yeah.
Because we do need to love the people that may live different lifestyles even within the church and they're just ignorant towards it. We need to, or there are people that are outside the church. There may be an amount of just not knowing because they're so inundated with something else. How could you not like care about them a little bit? You know what I mean? Like, and not make a big, I don't know, big argument about that type of stuff. And I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's like, like we were talking about like being real earlier, and I don't know if it's always been like this or maybe it's specifically with young people, or maybe it's more just kind of generalized now. But I feel like if anybody feels you have an agenda of any sort, and I feel this too, you know, it's like very off-putting, unless it's certain topics in society that are still like, okay, where it's like, yeah, we're going to talk about this. We're going to integrate this. Like, we're going to really make sure that you're thinking about this.
Yeah.
But like when it comes to faith or like really challenging people, I mean, I use challenging loosely. I think it's like, you know, inviting people or, you know, like actually speaking hope of, you know, the gospel. Into them, you know, into their lives. But, you know, it's like people smell a bias and they're just like so turned off. And I'm wondering if like part of the apathy is just like, it's not okay to have any type of bias or any type of agenda, because society is like really turned off to that.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see the opposite also. And that's not me like finding a nice way to disagree with you. Because I do agree with you. Yeah. Because I do see the opposite, where it's like there are people that just have this like unabashed bias that could never sway them, you know, or that could never be swayed. Those are the people I see that mostly talk that way online, but not in real life.
Yeah. Do you think those biases are like more socially acceptable? Where like,
yeah, I do.
Like they're like, I can be like super in your face about it because this is kind of popular.
I do, but I see that mostly on social media.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So if I were to, it's easy. I shouldn't say it's easy.
Yeah.
It is possible to have a conversation with a teen or a young adult in person about various topics that you may want an understanding or you have a disagreement with in person.
Yeah.
As opposed to even with close people that you're close with sending like a private message or a text message. It's just not as conducive to conversation. And I think that's because there's a lot of questions that don't have to be answered when you're not in person, you know?
Yeah, online is brutal. Like, I look back, I made a lot of mistakes online in college. and that's something that happened in COVID. I stopped using Facebook.
Yeah.
I barely use Instagram. You know, it's, you know, like, I'm trying to use YouTube less. Like, I've really taken a step back, and I feel healthier when I'm just surrounded by that. It's just,
I think that's the right way to explain it, surrounded. Because I think in my moments where I'm most addicted or I have habits of social media, I feel like it surrounds me. And if I'm idle at all, I must do it, you know? And the surrounding feels like a good way to explain that, because you just can't escape it at all. Yeah. And
even following Catholic pages are, you know, like, so follow us on Instagram. No, but when I'm following Catholic pages, I find myself getting frustrated, because
even with Dr. Taylor Marshall, even with his
even tamer things I don't know. I started getting kind of frustrated because part of me is like, and I don't know, maybe it's because I hear about people's trauma and insecurities every day, but like, this doesn't feel as real. This kind of doesn't feel like as helpful as it once did. And it's like you do get those highlight reels.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm a Catholic speaker, my life's great, and look how I've overcome this, but it's overcome, and like now I'm great. And it's like, a lot of people are in the middle of some really serious stuff, and so I don't know. I'm not putting down people's stories, because like we need stories of hope, and maybe their experience is like, yeah, they have really overcome stuff, but I just found like being surrounded by that.
Yeah.
I didn't find it helpful. Like, and it actually pointed me more towards just the gospel. Like I really started reading more scripture, Lectio Divina. Like I kind of got away from all the extra content, and I know I'm doing the opposite of promoting our podcast.
Thanks, bud.
But I was like, I just need to go to Jesus. Like, I want scripture, and I want the Eucharist, and and so I don't know.
We've had this discussion before, though, where
what you will.
Well, we've had this discussion, like when we wanted to do this from the beginning, the idea was like first to like help those who may feel intimidated working in ministry, right?
Yeah.
To dumb down doctrine, to help people to recognize that you don't have to be like a scholar to understand God fully, right? But the other thing was like we wanted it to be real. And I feel bad saying that because I don't want to make it seem like I think things are like inherently fake and stuff like that, but I'm like terrified of like self-promotion and like doing all that time. I'm really bad at it. It freaks me out. But the reason why is because like I don't want any element of like fakeness in it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that fakeness is inherently evil, because sometimes you do have to like promote yourself to reach more people and be disciples of all nations and stuff like that. But I don't blame you for like, I used to listen to like a lot of Catholic podcasts frequently, but there was a certain point where it was just like, and it's not because of redundancy or anything like that. It just like, it just didn't hit well anymore, like, and I don't think, maybe it was a me thing or something, but it was just like, I don't know. I can't explain it.
For me, it hit well. It was all great content, but it was too much.
Oh, okay.
Too much good content. That makes sense. And at some point I was, and I think it just personally, I was probably just like overdoing it, right? Because I think moderation, there's, and I do still listen to stuff, and but it's a lot less. And so I think it's just like picking a few sources to tap into, and not feeling like you have to tap into everything. But really keeping it simple. Like for me, I think I had to really just kind of re-engage with silence and like silent prayer and scripture. And that really allowed me to hear more stuff, and I was more intentional about what I was viewing or listening to.
Yeah,
because otherwise it was too much.
I get that. I do mean what I said before, even though I missed exactly what you were saying. But like, yeah, I've been trying to make the habit of going to daily mass, but it's not like I feel like absolutely fed every time I went. And plus I'm like watching like my 1.5-year-old who's like so loud and crazy and can't like do anything, or he does everything during mass. So I never feel like fed, but like there's an effort of disconnecting myself within that. And like the Eucharist obviously is gonna do something, whether it's silently or very loud or whatever, but at the very least it's an effort to disconnect and reconnect to something that was easy to connect to at a certain point in my life,
Something they don't tell you in marriage prep is hey, you're not gonna feel fed in mass for like the first like 5 years of having young children. You're so right. It changes everything. Like, it's not about feeling fed. It's like, okay, there's a reality here that I'm trying to enter into, but I'm also watching a baby who's trying to eat the donation envelopes. And so
why are my kids most hungry during the day, during Sunday mass? Like, why is it at that point they would eat everything on their plate. You know, like
the food they can't have.
Is that what it is? Yeah. Okay. What a dweeb, dude.
I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. That'd be cool if there was.
I bet there's something there. I'll hold on to those cute little things.
Yeah. Yeah. My daughter's asked me, when can I go eat?
Yeah. I know every time Reggie asks, because she's like a year away, it's like heartwarming.
Oh, wow. Dang,
she gets it. You know? Like,
wow.
No, I know. It's kind of crazy. Yeah.
Well, I don't even know how long we've been talking for at this point, but I just want to say, if you've made it to this point in the podcast, thank you. These are not the topics we were planning on talking about. This is a lot of banter. I think there's some good points here, but I just would say, for the sake of keeping it real, just being transparent, we are going to have kind of more direct topics. Although today, I mean, we're talking about chastity. We're talking about, kind of, I mean, where we've been and what's changed with the pandemic, personally, just societally, and I don't know, some other random stuff that's come up there. Grace and something all connected.
Yeah, and thanks for the dozens of people that have watched this, because now you give me an excuse to hang out with Adam more frequently, and that's what this whole thing was about. Like, it's just so cool.
You really got to stop showing up at my house late at night, Brett.
I mean, it's not like I go to the door. I call you from outside your house, maybe like a block away.
You don't call me on the phone. You just say,
throw rocks at your window, type of thing. You see, it's never reciprocated. That was like an open invitation for Adam to be like, yeah, Brett, I miss hanging out with you too. I miss this camaraderie. And he just makes fun of me for being a stalker. So
no, I hope people just saw you didn't even give me a chance to reciprocate. You just
there's been plenty of chances in these 2 years.
Done with the broom.
It's obvious that I'm just trying to win it back. That's all.
No, but I'm excited. It's starting. It's fun. Like, we both enjoy it. We both like, it's just natural to get to talk about stuff that we actually want to talk about. Like, this isn't us like coming up with some topic and then researching it. But it's just like, hey, what do you think?
It really was appropriate because we met for like 3 minutes before, and I was like, hey, I watched this weird show. They have a weird idea of what people may think heaven is. You mind if we talk about that? Sure. Okay, we'll introduce ourselves, and then it turned into purity culture. And so next time, actually, that gives you a chance to watch it, though.
Next episode.
Maybe. I don't want to promise anything, though, because this happens every time. So yeah, no, watch the show though. Tell me if you finish it even if you hate it. It's only like 20 minutes or 20 episodes or something like that. 25, and they're like 20 minutes long or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to?
No, I'll tell you later. Okay. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
In that case, you may or may not hear that topic next. But
yeah, that's why I'm saying don't make promises. Like your promises that you would hang out.
Yes, in the future.
Maybe.
But all right, if anybody out there has any suggestions or topics they want us to go into, just because for some weird reason they like hearing us talk about stuff,
dozens, Adam, dozens.
Leave comments. Give it a share. Give us some idea of where you're at, or if you have any questions. If you're hearing us talk about these things and thinking, what did you mean by that?
Oh yeah, that's actually a good point.
What's wrong with you? Like, let us know. We're open to that.
We were really bad, at least. Yeah, I'll say we worked together. At responding to like comments. We had a handful of emails and stuff, and we've just been really bad at responding to that. I think we're going to be better at that. So if you get an email response from like 3 years ago or something like that, that's our bad. But
blame it on our kids, and eventually,
they just keep coming, man. These kids, they just keep coming. But yeah, we're trying to be a little more active with like the website, maybe a Patreon thing and all that. Social media, we got to do that again.
Pay for all the kids.
I know, my kids go to Catholic school, dude. They need, man. But yeah, we didn't stop because we didn't enjoy this. It really was like
life.
It was life, yeah. So if you enjoy this, thanks for sticking around. it really is just an excuse for us to hang out and to share, I don't know, share our conversation, because this really is how our conversation is most of the time, you know?
Yep. We got lunch a couple weeks ago, and it was like, man, we should have just recorded our lunch.
Yeah.
And then a podcast.
That poke wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be, by the way. Let's go to a different place next time.
Yeah, it was like a sidebar poke place.
We should have just got the barbecue there.
I know. Yeah.
Next time. Whatever. Okay.
Well, thank you guys for watching or listening or wherever you're at. Hopefully we'll see you next time. Go eat some pizza or something.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. All right. See you guys.
God bless.